guys, and welcome back to the final episode of Rebuilding Wimbledon of the season. Now, I decided to title these basically based around how I think the season went. So last year it wouldn't have been a post-mortem, it would have had a different title, but this year I'm just going to call it Moving Chairs on the Titanic, because that's frankly how it felt towards the end of the season. But yeah, we're going to do a little bit more analysis this time. We're going to look at the players, of course, like I did last time. We're going to try and be streamlined about it so I don't ramble quite as much, but hopefully, yeah. But if you are new to the series and you didn't watch the last one, bear in mind, this is just an added episode for those of us that love the stats. So if you're not into that sort of stuff, do not feel bad about skipping this if you're not going to miss anything that's relevant to the series. So I'll just tell you now that the board set the budget at £48 million, so I'm going to go out and spend that. But this episode will help us decide kind of where I need to spend that other than the obvious areas. So yeah, if this isn't your thing, don't worry, skip it, join us back tomorrow for the brand new episode of the new season. So yeah, let's get straight into things basically. You know what money we've got to spend now. It's good. It took us a little while actually. I had to simmer, not sim, but you know, I had to process a few days before they actually told us. But there you go. Ramselaar was player of the season, as you would imagine. One goal of the season. Duarte was signing of the season, and Ramselaar won the other award as well. I can't remember what that one was. Anyway, so as you can see, possession-wise, we've actually got the highest average percentage possession in the entire league, and that to me is a very telling thing because it means that we're keeping hold of the ball well. The problem is our application. Now, I think that is a good sign. I know this sounds stupid, but I think this actually bodes well for the new season. I think if we can get a full plethora of players back, some strong players in certain areas to actually put the chances away and do something with the ball, I think we'll actually be very creative and very strong next year. I'd be worried if we weren't getting a lot of possession as well. So say we would like Newcastle here, who have only averaged 44.58. So I thought we'd have a little look through the team stats as well before we dive into the player stuff. Penalties, we've had 3, which isn't too bad. City have had 6, Fulham have had 5. Has anyone had none? Yes, a couple have had none. Headers 1, we're actually very low down on the headers 1, and I think that's an area we need to strengthen. Perhaps with, like, we're winning a lot of headers at the back, that much I can see, because our defenders have got great headed stats and decent ratios, but I think in the midfield we need a strong header of the ball, and I'm wondering if Sam Farmer could be that person. I don't know if he's tall or not, we'll have to see. Headers 1 ratio, as you can see, look, 5th best headers 1 ratio of the entire league, but it's the actual number of them won overall that is fairly low, but that might be because we play the ball on the ground a fair bit. That could also be another factor, so a lot of our headers 1 could be defensive. So yellow cards, 100 yellow cards, which is a lot, but still nowhere near as many as Chelsea, which is insane. Unfortunately, 7 reds, though, is the real problem. And I think the tactic kind of plays into that a little bit. And unfortunately, if you take off the really attacking and aggressive tactics part of the tactic, it just becomes completely useless. So we need to get defenders that are, because we've not had it as bad as this before, which means I think people like Fuentes, who I was already warned was a walking red card, sort of definitely contributed to that in some way. So there we go. We'll ignore the form for now because that's not really relevant. And these sort of games won, and these ones aren't really that important. We're looking at the attacking now. Goals scored, though, we are joint 15th. So only 38 goals in 38 games. Sorry, no, not 38. Yeah, 38 goals in 38 matches is very, very low when you consider how many we scored last year. And I think that is purely down to the lack of striking options we've had this year. You know, Adam Kirk was not bought as a player for now. He was bought as a player for the future. He was me trying to find another Norman Millington. Millington, if you recall, he didn't hit the ground running straight away. He took a couple of seasons to find his feet, but once he did, he was absolutely dynamite. And I'm hoping that's what we're going to get from Adam Kirk, basically. But it may never turn out that way. But that's what I brought in Fabio anyway. But unfortunately, the injuries to Marley and Fabio and everyone, frankly, for the entire year have kind of really left us hamstrung up front. And I think that is the real issue in that. And I'm hoping next year we can keep them fit, basically, and therefore just do better. Because remember, they're not getting worse strikers. They're the same strike force from the year before, but better in theory because they've improved. So I don't think it's down to just buy new strikers, because I know that there would have been people saying that, even though the episodes, I'm just like 5 episodes ahead, but I know people will be saying, oh, buy new strikers, that will fix it. You can't just do that. That's a bit like having a car breakdown and then switching the headlight bulbs. It doesn't work like that. You need to tackle the root of the issue rather than just the actual surface problem. That's the key. Cross completion, 11th, which is reasonable. 14%. That's mainly because I think again, with wingers out, we've had to play Ramselaar and Cleverley out wide quite a lot, and Honda. And they, as much as they've got decent crossing stats, Cleverley particularly, or he certainly did at the halfway stage of the season when I checked the stats, I just think that in overall, wingers are just going to be better at that. So maybe that's an area that we can boost next year with some decent wingers. Cross completion, again, it's relatively low, but that's because I think over the second half of the year, we just weren't getting into good enough positions to put crosses in, to be honest. Goals from corners, though, 11 from Liverpool is mental. But 6 from us, or is that 7? 7 is reasonable, actually. That means we're utilising our set pieces from an attacking perspective relatively well, unlike Middlesbrough and QPR, who are clearly shocking at them. Goals from direct free kicks. Right. This is an area that I always get bugged by, because look, 4, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 free kicks scored in the entire season. Isn't that actually as bad as it has been in the past? I've seen like 3 before. And bear in mind, there's been at least 7 or 8 scored in the Premier League so far, and we're at the halfway stage in the real life. So it still feels a little bit underpowered for my money, but that's just my opinion. It seems to be that the most annoying thing about it is that the league you're playing in seems to always get a lower rating. Whereas if you look at the other leagues, they generally have a lot more scored. Look at the amount of goals scored from free kicks in the Championship. It's too many to count, basically. And the other leagues are all the same. And it was always the same when we were coming up. So when we were in League 2, there was no goal scored in there, but there was like 30 in the Premier League. It seems to be weird. That's just something I've noticed. Anyway, that's not here to pick bugs at the game anyway. So, goals from indirect free kicks. Again, we're fairly low on that. So I need to look at finding out an attacking free kick instruction. Now, if anyone's got an idea, something we can do from an attacking free kick, then do let me know in terms of an actual set piece movement. Pass completion is nice and high. 4th in the league, behind only Swansea, Fulham and Man United. Now, Fulham and Swansea play really nice sort of Swansea-esque football, and United are just dominant, basically. So I see that as a good thing. Pass completion is nice and high. That's good. Passes completed overall, ours is a little bit lower, and I think that would have been higher had we been able to keep our form for the second half of the season. Shots on target ratio, that's an area we need to look at, possibly due to the poor strikers that we've had to play up top. Maybe a few of them missing a lot of chances. Fabio's missed quite a few as well, I have to say. Shots on target, the sheer number is actually reasonably high, though. It's mid-table, which is where I'd like to see. Fouls against, well, look at that, 482, which is a lot, let's face it. Whereas Middlesbrough have been pretty clean on that one. Dribbles per game, we're sort of mid-table, which is sort of where you'd expect right now. Defensively, it sort of slipped towards the end of the season. In fact, we ended up conceding 62 goals in the end, which is still 20 better than last year. But when you look at how well we were doing at the halfway stage in the year, I just feel that, unfortunately, once we got all those injuries, it just left us so hamstrung. And again, with the amount of money we're spending, we can't expect perfection. But remember how well we did in the first half of the year with the full squad. That's what I'm looking at. Look at that as a kind of microcosm of what we can achieve when we have a full team. That's the way I'm looking at it. Goals conceded from corners. As you can see, we're not the worst in the league. In fact, look at that. QPR have conceded 12 times. We've only conceded 4, which is better, but still could do with some improvement. As you'll notice, West Brom and Liverpool didn't concede a single one. So there we go. Clean sheets. Still, 10 clean sheets. We only had 4 last year, so it's still a massive improvement in that sense. So I'm still happy with that. Fouls made. So we actually can... Oh, right. Okay, that's interesting. So we actually drew a lot of fouls as well. Maybe our tactic encourages that too. Tackles 1 ratio. Again, that's a little bit low, and that's an area... Again, we need to have some more workhorsey players, because I still think that defensively... our players are okay, but we'll see that when we actually take a little look at that area of the pitch. As for average attendances, it's not really that important. We're obviously going to have the lowest, but we will move into our new stadium soon. Average attendance by capacity, again, fairly low considering, but that might be because we were playing again in a not our stadium, but we still had 6 sellouts, which is reasonably good. Right, net transfer spend. Of course, we spent a lot of money. We have to. I mean, but when you look at the salaries, it just doesn't even bear thinking about. Look, £24 million. We're still £16 million less than QPR, West Ham, and all those teams. And I don't think we can really start to be challenging until we can start to basically bridge that gap. And I don't think we'll get close to it this season too. I think once we've got sort of moved in all the players for this year, our salary is still going to be around about 33 million maybe. So we're still going to be probably ranked bottom of the league in terms of season preview. But I still think next year we can have a much better year. I don't think we're going to get hit by as many injuries as we did last year. So that's what we're looking at there. Let's get into the squad and take a little look at what's actually been going on to a more nucleonic level. Right then, I decided to start off with Luis Ribeiro just because he is the goalkeeper and it makes sense to give him a little tryout first because of course we're only bloody hell. We're only comparing one goalkeeper anyway, so it makes sense to just give him a little go here. So he has, well, he's got 76% save percentage, which is better than Daniel Bachmann by 6%, and that 6% has saved us a lot over the year basically. And remember, at one point we checked it and it was 78. Now I think that over the second half of the season he's just faced a lot more shots, and I really wish there was a way that we could use like a slider to cut out some of the games basically. Apologies if you can hear sound in the background. Once again, my neighbour is, I don't know, they look like sawing wood this time it sounds like. But the one thing I really like about Luis Ribeiro is the number of saves held compared to saves parried, and I'm fairly certain that that was the other way around with Bachmann. He would parry a lot more, which means we concede less corners in general. 13 clean sheets in all competitions is much, much better than it was before. His sort of goals conceded is definitely a lot lower, and I'm just generally pleased with him more in every single aspect of the pitch. And there's not really a lot more I can say on that, although we are going to look for another young goalkeeper if we can. Now, obviously, I've got a guy coming in from Serbia who I think I've already shown, but if I haven't, I will show him in the transfer window episode. But he won't be joining us until next summer, or is it January? I don't know. But the point is that we won't have him just yet, so I might bring in another backup just to sort of plug that hole, or maybe even try to look for someone awesome if we can find someone better than Ribeiro. But I've been fairly happy with his performances this year. I don't think a lot of the goals we've conceded have been down to him. There's been a few little annoying ones, but that feels to me a little bit more just like those random things that happen sometimes. But I feel like it's definitely a step up from Daniel Bachmann. So now let's take a little look at centre-backs. Right then, so this year, when it comes to centre-backs, we've had a few that have actually played there. So we've had Anderson, Gomez, Lister, Planic, Bernardo. Now, I'm ignoring Fuentes because technically he can play there, but as far as I know, he never actually did play there this year. No, he always played at left-back this year, so he'll be put into that sort of category. So, let's take a little look. Let's just start from one end and work our way across. So, mistakes leading to goals. Anderson made 6, and that is a little bit worrying for me, to be honest, because 6 is a lot. In fact, I think that's more than we had last year, and that might be because he was playing with inexperienced partners, but when you look at Brian Gomez, 33 appearances and only 2 mistakes leading to goals, which is a vastly better ratio overall. Bernardo played a lot of games, but a lot of them are off the bench, so it doesn't really count when you actually look at it. He played less than half the time of the others, but still a reasonable amount anyway. But actually look, Gomez played more minutes on the pitch than Anderson and made like 3 times less mistakes. So I think Gomez is going to be one hugely important player. But then again, remember, Gomez has played a lot of, well, not a lot of that, but he has played some of that time at left back. As you can see, 13 matches, but still, when he played in that centre, oh, dandy, he was superb. I don't know what that's about. Is that international games? Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, when he's played in the centre, he's been superb. So we're going to consider him to basically have played in the centre for now, because he played the majority there and got his best result in that position. So, when you look at goals, which is irrelevant, actually, let's not even bother with goals. They're not there to score goals. Dribbles per game, Gomez will have a higher one, as will Fuentes, because they're both playing at fullback, so that's fair enough. But you'll notice Bernardo has a very low one, but I don't know, I don't think that's that important either. So pass completion, Planic 75, Bernardo 75, Anderson only 69. Now that is a worry for me, and I do worry that perhaps, so for example, we just compare him to Nenad Planic like we have done in the past. Compare him to Anderson, and we'll just sort of, what is going on there? Can we actually get a proper... Right, there we go. I don't know what that was about. So areas passing is obviously an area that Planic definitely excels in, but you're actually looking, he's starting to excel in most areas now over Anderson, which is interesting for me because I think he's actually starting to become a very good player, Planic. And maybe Anderson isn't going to be the one that we thought he was, because it seems like his development has started to stall now. He's 22 years old and he doesn't seem to be getting a lot better, and he's on a lot of money as well. Areas where he is good are sort of some of his mental stats because he's older, but Planic still does well in certain areas of that. One area that Planic doesn't have a lot in though is natural fitness, and that can be a problem basically. Got great heading, great marking, great tackling. He is a good player. I just think that as he gets older, as some of his mental stats start to improve, I think a couple more seasons and he'll be an absolute stunner of a central defender. And I think that Nenad Planic could be one for the future in terms of the sort of player that could play in the Champions League with us one day and maybe even be at the heart of our centre-back partnership when we win that eventually. That's the plan anyway. So that's what I think personally regarding those two. And I think Anderson, his passing is very low. It does seem like it's lower than last year. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it does feel lower. As for the number of tackles made, Anderson is in one area of his game where he is an absolute stud, is the sort of pure defensive side of the game. Like, don't ask him to do any kind of fancy footwork or passes, but I feel like we need to have that. If we're going to play in the Premier League, we do need players that can get the ball at their feet and pass, particularly as we play out from the back. So that's an area I'm a little bit concerned about. So when I look for another centre-back, a youngster potentially, just like a regen one with hopefully high potential, I'll look to see if they've got a decent pass on them currently, basically. Certainly an area that looks like, I don't want one that's got a low one, because as much as it will go up, a couple of points over their career, it's not going to be hugely important. So yeah, Anderson, in terms of the actual meat and bones of defending, he is an absolute monster, basically. And this has been so played out. Look at that, 88% tackle completion this year. And that to me is why he is such an important player for us. However, the problem he makes is sometimes he does make mistakes still, and he's got that little bit of inconsistency in his game, whereas Nenad Planic, he's looking like our potential standout centre-back for the season, although you have to say Brian Gomez has done okay, but again, 81% tackle completion is much lower, and I'd like to see it higher. For me, 70 is like the very least I would expect, although frankly at this level now you want to be heading towards 80. 80 is like, yeah, that's solid. 85 and above for me is really, really good, and 88 from Anderson just shows you what a good tackle winning player he can actually be. But, and you'll notice as well, he wins a lot of key tackles. That's another thing I've noticed about Anderson. 60 key tackles won compared to the likes of Planic, who's only won 25. So Anderson is clearly that player, and it's interesting because it's the sort of thing that we could maybe even deploy someone like Planic as more of a ball-playing centre-back. If you remember on Portsmouth, I actually had Jack Watmore playing like that for a bit, and I wonder if Planic could actually be that player for us. Somewhere down the line, and it might require some slight changes to the tactic, but I do wonder if maybe having another slightly more creative player back there in the likes of Planic could just give us a little bit more creativity when picking a pass, and it would mean that we could distribute the ball to him instead of Anderson and take some of the pressure off of him, in theory. Now, Gomez has done okay with his pass completion, but it's still not quite to the level of Planic. looking at overall pass completion, again, it's all about Pjanic. 75% pass completion is just relatively good. And I'm very, very pleased with him generally. Shots, not really important about that. Gomez overall has the best average rating as well. Pjanic doesn't seem to get very good ratings, and I don't really know why that is. The game just doesn't seem to give him good ratings no matter what he does, and I think that's because defenders are judged more on the number of tackles that they're actually winning as opposed to the percentage of the tackles that they're winning, and I think that might be part of the problem, because pass completion doesn't really come into that, and I think that's probably the issue with Pjanic, is that he wins less key tackles, and just less tackles per game overall. Not a huge amount less, but still one less per game, and I think that makes a difference when it comes to that. As for games won, Liestel barely played, really, so we can discount that. Gomez, 35%, which is important, but Anderson, only 18% of the games he played we won, and that's an interesting factor as well, so I'm wondering if maybe phasing him out over a little while, and maybe, I don't know, it's interesting, it's something worth noting if nothing else. Headers won percentage, Gomez 85, Bernardo 85, Pjanic 81, and Anderson 81, so it's interesting to see that our sort of first choice partnership of those two win the least amount of headers, whereas when the likes of Gomez are playing there, 85, so I'm thinking that maybe later down the line a Gomez-Pjanic centre-back partnership, with Gomez being the sort of the key tackling kind of player. Then again, I don't really know. It's a strange conundrum to be in. I think we've got 3 solid centre-backs there, but they could all do with improving certain areas of their game. In terms of key headers, Anderson does win a lot of key headers, and so does Gomez, which to me says that Gomez is probably the slightly better one in the air in that sense. But also, when you look at the number of key passes, Pjanic 2, Anderson 4. So that is very interesting that Pjanic, as much as he's made more passes and keeps the ball better, he doesn't seem to be able to make that many key passes, so maybe a ball playing defender is not a good idea for him. Mistakes wise, Gomez has actually made quite a lot, but I think fullbacks tend to, I don't know actually, he does seem to be a bit mistake ridden, but look at that, 436 interceptions. I'm pleased with that. He does seem to have great anticipation, or it would certainly indicate that he does. 14 is relatively good at this point. He's a 4-star defender, but with more room to improve. Hopefully that broken ankle isn't going to affect him too badly. Anderson, again, as you can see, he's sort of looking like he's maxing out his potential currently, and that is a problem for me, and I feel like that is why in the summer I'm going to look for some more young defenders to try and bring some through eventually, and I think maybe not this season, but maybe at the end of the year, Anderson could move on for a nice tidy summer. He's probably not going to get any better, and I feel like he's just not quite what we need. So maybe not this summer, but definitely we're going to look for some defenders in the summer, obviously, because this year is going to be a lot about youth. So yeah, that's centre-backs. Let's move on to fullbacks. Right, so fullbacks again, we're going to ignore Brian Gomez for now, although he has played there. We're going to look at more Manquillo, Fuentes, Kim Jong-hwan, and Njuku. Basically, those 4 are the sort of the key that I'm really interested in so far. So things we want to see from our fullbacks are, well, Brian Gomez, I'm pretty certain he made both of those mistakes when he was playing at centre-back, because I remember the games, but Manquillo has made slightly more, but he's played more games than Fuentes, so that feels about even. But one thing I would notice is this. Looking at cross completion, Manquillo, 14% from a fullback is about what I'd like to see. You know, that's not what they're expected to be, but Kim Dong-hwan, when he has played, has done all right in that role, you know, 12%, but Fuentes only 8, so he's more of a defensive defender, which is fine, because frankly, we needed that support there, but I would like to see maybe another left-back come in, one with a bit better sort of forward play, and maybe someone the likes of Njuku, if he could actually get more game time, could maybe facilitate that. But again, he's not made that many, he's not even had a single cross completed, so maybe that's not the ideal point of view. As for assists, Manquillo's got a couple, which is always nice. Dribbles per game, he is the king of that, and that's another area where Fuentes really does fall down. Even Gomez, who mostly plays at centre-back, has got a higher dribbles per game. Fuentes is very much a sort of sit back and occupy that left wing space, and that's fine, but I just feel that maybe we need someone more like Manquillo, who is, you know, he'll make more mistakes. That's, as you can see here, 77 compared to 65. But when you actually look at it, if you average that out over the whole season, if they both play the same number of games, I'd say you'd probably find that Fuentes made more. So I think a left back is another spot that we really do need to look for over the summer this year. Pass completion, Njuku and Nigel actually keep the ball really well. Fuentes does well, but then again, those 4 are all above 80, so that's fine by me. Kim Dong-hwan a little bit lower, but that might be because he's been deployed out of position on the wing on his wrong foot, often filling in on that left side. What's he requested here? Okay, he's requested to be transfer listed, and it might not be a bad thing, frankly, because I don't think he's going to get much game time for us. As for tackles per game, Manquillo is really high on that, and actually has higher than most of our centre-backs, which is nice. But for the most part, they're all above 5, except for Njuku. But again, I'd like to see him play more games before I can really decide on that one. But for the most part, they're all done relatively well. Tackles won, Kim Dong-hwan, most of them are above 80. Manquillo, again, despite being a decent forward player, has still won more tackles than Fuentes, although it is minimal. As for the number of key tackles, once again, 27 for Manquillo, only 22 for Fuentes. Over the whole year, maybe they would have probably been about level, you'd probably have to say there. As for average rating, Manquillo, again, he's been the standout sort of fullback player for us this year, and I'm hoping that he can continue in that role for a little while. Now, he is wanted by Liverpool, which is interesting. Now, he's a key player, and I might have to set a decent high asking price on him just to try and prevent that, because for the moment, he is a very, very good player. He's 26. I think he's good. Those mentals really do help us. He's got decent crossing. He's got okay dribbling. But considering he does a decent number of dribbles, he's actually not too bad there. Still got 3 years left on his contract. I'm pleased with him, basically. He does a really good job for us. And I'm hoping we need to find someone like him on that left-hand side to really start to solidify things on the wing there. Now, looking at games won again, Kim Dong-hwan has won, interestingly, a large amount, as has Brian Gomez. Manquillo's played a lot more, so I don't know if we can really use that as a fair assumption. Not in this sort of situation. Now, something I also noticed is that Manquillo, for a fullback, actually wins a decent number of headers. 64% compared to 54 is actually very, very high. Brian Gomez, of course, wins loads more because he's mostly a centre-back. So, for me, that's a decent, for a fullback to be winning 64% of his headers, I'm actually pretty pleased with that. And look at the number of key headers as well. 32 key headers compared to, Fuentes with 12. So I think that's a good thing to note as well. Key passes, Manquillo, look at that, 122 key passes, and that is the key stat for me. Only 39 for Fuentes, and that shows you how much more Manquillo can get forward. He's almost like a box-to-box winger. I know he didn't go in the box, but you know what I mean. He'll go from byline to byline, and that's what we want, those hard-working. I want to find another player that's basically like Javi Manquillo to play on the left. That's my main goal for the defence over the summer, actually, because defensively, centre-backs, I think we're okay, but I'd like to bring in some youngsters to bring through. But the real area where I think we need improvements, because for a start, Fuentes gets sent off way too much for my liking as well, and that's a problem. In fact, we'll just take a little look at Fuentes' overall stats here. You can see the number of fouls that he actually commits is 2.58 per game. And I think Manquillo, in theory, this is where it's going to show me up. It's not hugely less, but he does get a lot less yellow cards. 14 yellows and 1 red. Sorry, no reds. Whereas Fuentes, on the other hand, is on 12 yellows, but those 3 red cards are the key here. Manquillo, it seems to be much better at staying on the pitch once he gets booked. So that's, again, another reason why I love this guy. But that, for me, the key stat there is the key passes. Mistakes, again, we can kind of ignore that one for now because they're probably about the same, although Fuentes would probably have made more if you average it out. But look at the number of interceptions as well. Manquillo is just a monster. He's got nearly, in fact, no, he's got nearly double the number of interceptions as well. Everything about his game says that he fits the tactic we're playing because he's getting high numbers in every category. Fuentes is not, and I need to find a player with similar stats, or at least could potentially get similar stats to Manquillo to play on that left back role. And I think that's an area that if we can strengthen there, it could make us a much more solid defensive unit and a lot less of a liability over the full year. So that's the next thing we're going to look at. So far we're going for, I need to get a goalkeeper, because that's just an area that I want to strengthen, but only as sort of a squad player. Some young centre-back, or maybe a young centre-back with some high potential, just to bring them in slowly, but we want a good first-team left-back. That's where I'm really looking. So, let's move on to the midfield. The centres first. So, centre midfield is a very large sort of topic here. So, we've got Ramselaar, we've got Duarte, we've got Cleverley, Honda. Now, apparently we can get rid of high players on loan or on trial. Not at club. Oh, that's what we want to look at. Right, so that's made it a lot more easy because we're not looking at players out on loan now. So Bart Ramselaar, Duarte, Cleverley, Honda, Reeves, Charlotte hasn't really played that, and Masek. They're the kind of ones, Saville. So those are the ones we're really looking at, but Saville we can kind of ignore a little bit because he's not actually played as much as I would have liked. Masek can just about sneak in because I think he's going to be great in the future. So, mistakes leading to goals. Key thing here, Jake Reeves. Now, remember, a lot of his time this year would have been played in that defensive midfield role, which means that he's technically going to be relied on more for defensive action, so perhaps that's not entirely bad, but still, I would have liked to have seen a little bit better from him there. Something I would like to see, though, is Sam Farmer. Next year, Sam Farmer is going to be playing pretty much the entire season as our defensive midfielder, which means he's going to get game time, and I'm hoping that he could step up next year and be an absolute monster for us, because Jake Reeves just isn't good enough in that role anymore. I don't know where Farmer's actually played for Hull City. Let's just take him, just quickly take a little look at Sam Farmer here. We can have a little look at his stats. Where are you, Sammy? Right, so over the full year at Hull City, he has played majority of the time. Has any of his stats gone up? Yeah, okay, not too bad. So actually, he's predominantly played there, but notice that he played a lot better when he was actually playing as a defensive midfielder, and he only played once at the attacking mid, but still did not have a great time out there, which is a little bit of a worry for me. But I still think, for the most part, his stats next year to play that ball-winning midfield role on defend this is pretty much match made in heaven for the lad, genuinely. Aggression is a little low, but that might just mean that we don't get so many sendings off. Acceleration is stupidly good. He's very, very fast for a defensive midfielder, and that's an interesting sort of feature. Bravery, he's got bravery, he's decent determination, not hugely great. Positioning, teamwork, and work rate are solid. Also, tackling is great, marking is solid, got a decent long shot on him as well, and a great first touch. I think this lad, and he's got decent passing as well, could next year be an absolute star if we play our cards right. That's the way I'm looking at it. So let's just go back and actually take a look at things properly and remove those guys again. So moving on, cross completion is pretty much irrelevant for me in terms of the middle, although it's nice to see the likes of Duarte and Masak actually do okay, but that could be out of like 5 crosses, so it's hard to say. They don't get in those positions very often. In terms of goals, Duarte is the monster of goals, and that's what I like to see. You know, he's got goals in his game. I'd like to see him add a few more assists, because remember, he is playing as an advanced playmaker. Now, I don't know what his passing stats like, 15, and his vision is 18. I would like to see a little bit more from him, frankly. That's just my opinion on him. I would like to see a little bit more. I noticed he's got his rat tail back again. I swear it had changed at one point to being like long hair, or is that another player? The regen hair thing is just is an enigma to me. It really is. Assists-wise, Ramselaar is the king of assists, but cleverly has contributed nicely, as has Honda. Player of the Match awards, of course, is Ramselaar as well. Now, dribbles per game, Duarte is very, very good, and you'll notice that Aga in the games he played was very, very high on that as well, but we'll ignore Aga for now because he mostly plays on the wing. Pass completion, this is an area that's important for my midfielders. So, Ramselaar only 80, but one thing I have noticed, and this is key, is look at the quality of Roman Masek in terms of his passing and his tackling. Generally, he played as the box-to-box midfielder, for the most part, but still 86% pass completion, and he's played 9 matches, and well, 22 if you count his substitute appearances, and 91 tackle ratio. For me, Roman Masek looks like he has the hallmarks of an incredible player. That's the way I'm looking at it. He is a box-to-box midfielder as well, and that, I don't know, that 14 tackling and 13 passing, along with some 14 vision. I just think that this lad could genuinely be the one that actually stakes a claim to that position next year. And I'm hoping he'll get some more game time, because I'm genuinely very, very pleased with him. When he has played very, very well. And now that he's a 3-star player, I just wonder if we can find a space for him in the team next year without having to get too many more players in there. Because I think bringing in someone like him through would be better than spending loads of money on one. Because I think wingers are an area we really do need money for this year. So, pass completion, again, Cleverly's a bit low, but again, he's out on the wing a lot of the time, though he has played in the middle, but it's a little bit distorted by that. Tackles per game, Jake Reeves, of course, because he's played a little deeper, will have, of course, made more tackles per game, but still, Masek isn't too bad with 3. Number of key tackles, again, Masek's made 4 key tackles, but only started 9 matches, and to me, that says a lot about his game. He is a real sort of, he's like a janitor for that midfield. A janitor that can whip up, like, you know, mop up any messes, pick up the ball, and then, but he can also distribute it. So I'm very, very pleased with him, actually, over the course of this year. Okay, fair enough, games won only 27, but then again, that's really hard to tell if there's any kind of real obvious glaring errors, though Shala hasn't won a lot of matches, which is interesting. Headers won, Masek, very low on headers won. Perhaps he is not the tallest. That might be an area of his game that he is not strong. 9 headers and, 7 jumping reach. He's not stupidly tall either, so that might be an area that, okay, he's not going to be stupidly strong on, but there's always going to be pitfalls with this. Ramselaar actually wins a decent number of headers. Key headers, though, well, Cleverly, very, very good. Ramselaar, again, very, very good. But Masek, not good for the headers at all. That's an area of his game where it really does fall down. Key passes, though. Duarte with 200 key passes this year. That's what I like to see. Ramselaar as well with 174. It's great. Honda and, so Masek, again, fairly low on that. But then again, actually, no, fair enough. He's made 53 in 9 games, 9 starts. So for me, I think if he plays the amount of games that the other players have got, he's probably more into this sort of area here. So actually, he could have had a very good year. And not only that, but looking at the number of mistakes he's made over the course of this, 16 mistakes in 9 starts. So let's just say that we double that and add a little bit more. I still feel like he would still be fairly low on the mistakes, which is nice to see. So I'm pretty pleased with him overall. Interceptions, interestingly, fairly low on the interceptions. But again, I suppose if he plays more games, there might be more of a chance for that. But it's certainly interesting to know. I'm actually fairly happy with our midfielders. I might look for some more young ones, but that's about it. I'm not going to go out and really overdo it this time with those sort of big money signings. I'm going to try and look for youth and strengthen from the back upwards, basically. But really on the wing is where I'm going to be looking for players, because I think that's our weakest point this season. So let's take a look at the wingers right now. So, wingers. Now, obviously, we can talk about Ramselaar playing there, because he's played enough of that role for me to feel like I can actually include him there. 19 games played, and actually played better when he was out on the ring. Played, interestingly, even better when he was in a more unfamiliar position, which is strange. Cleverly played there too, so we actually are going to talk about him along with Honda and Shala, really. There's only 4 of them, and that's where you look at it. You know, you think Aga and Shala last year were killer for us. But with Aga being missing for most of the year, he will be back next year. But again, as you can see from Aga, he's sort of, I feel like it's really killed his progression as a player, and I do worry about that. So I'm thinking I want to look at both left and right wingers over the summer and really try and find some quality. That's an area that I'm desperate to find quality in, basically. Mistakes leading to goals, all of them have got one each of the players that played enough games, and that's kind of a fair enough point. But Ramselaar did play a lot more minutes, so I suppose you could say he was slightly better there. Cross completion, Cleverley. This is what I mean about Tom Cleverley and his cross completion. 18% for a player that is essentially a midfielder is used to playing in the centre. I'm very, very pleased with that. He really can pick out a great pass from time to time, but 14% is fine by me. Now, Aga actually only had 10% in the 5 games he played, but he got 3 assists. He puts in so many crosses because he gets into the positions that I actually sometimes think it doesn't matter. I'm still on defenders here, it's just occurred to me. Let's just look to midfielders. I don't think it adds a lot to that, but there's a couple of things it might just change around a little bit. So, looking at tackles completed, again, Aga did well getting back in those games too. One area where Schala isn't so great is getting back, and that often left Fuentes a little bit exposed, and Cleverley was the same. And I think that's why Fuentes didn't get forward as much, because almost like he knew there was no support in front of him. So again, this left wing, if we can sort out the left wing, we're looking great down that right wing. Manquillo and whoever gets put in front of him do a stellar job, but the left-hand side is an area where I really do want to concentrate on over the summer, but I still want to look for a better right winger if we can do. Key tackles-wise, Cleverley, again, because he sometimes played in the midfield, would have made a couple of those, but it's still not bad. Schala, again, as you can see, made none, and that is a key thing for me to note as well. Goals scored, Ramselaar, but again, some of those came from the middle. Honda made 3, but I think they were either penalties or free kicks, all of them. As for assists, Ramselaar again, solid as a rock. Pass completion, Ramselaar again, and again, Schala, low on pass completion and low on cross completion, and he doesn't exactly win a lot of tackles either. So I think Schala is a player that I'm going to try and move on in the summer, because he's just not good enough for what we need right now, and an area that I might keep him, but put his squad status down slightly, see if I can keep him as a sort of backup to whoever we can bring in on that wing, basically. Looking at tackles, Cleverley again makes a lot of tackles, and once again, Schala, it's higher than Aga's was, but I feel like Aga's might have come up a little bit over the course of a year. But look at that dribbles per game. 4.32 is astonishingly good, and again, something that Schala just can't get close to matching, and I think that maybe there's still room for Schala. Shots on target, again, sorry, not for Schala, for Aga. Shots on target, again, Aga is the star of that, but once again, that could be out of literally 4 shots and he's hit 3 on target, which is still solid, but you know what I mean. Whereas again, Schala isn't too bad in that area, frankly. That's one of the few areas of his game where he is very solid. He's got goals in him, but I just don't think he's played enough. And if you look at his average rating over the season, he's been appalling when he has actually played. And as for his assists over 90 minutes, again, the lowest of all of our wing players that have even touched the ball this year, apart from James Loveridge, who, of course, didn't play there very often at all. Games won, once again, Schala, 19%. Cleverley, lovely old job there at 33%. And Aga, 20 when he played, but again, only played 5 matches. So headers won. Ramselaar, again, is just so good in the air. And even Aga is decent in the air. Once again, Schala falls down there. So Schala is definitely on the way out. That's much we can definitely say. But Aga's key headers actually weren't that high. But it might be because he was winning them further up the pitch, so they're not quite as important. I don't know. Key passes, we can kind of ignore Aga for this one. But again, I feel like Schala probably could have made a few more. When you look, if you double that, you know, I feel like he should have been making a few more key passes. Ramselaar's superb. Mistakes-wise, Cleverley and Ramselaar, it's a reasonable amount. I'm fairly okay with the way that's gone. Passes completed per 90 minutes as well. Once again, Schala just falls so low on that, but Aga's not too great on that one either. So yeah, looking at what we've ascertained so far is I want to bring in another goalkeeper just as a squad player, a young centre-back to be sort of one for the future, a left-back for the starting 11, basically, and a left-sided winger as well to hopefully start, maybe a right-sided one as well. That's what we've got on our shopping list so far. And the final area of the pitch, essentially, is the strikers. So we're just going to go on to that one now. So, strikers. Now, this year, we've basically used 5, but more likely to say 4 strikers this season. And obviously the injuries have just completely hamstrung us for most of the year, which is a real disappointment. No mistakes leading to goals, which is always good. Now let's look at tackles won. Murphy yet again leads the way with tackles won. Marley, though, only 27, and that is an area which I would like to see him strengthen his game up a little bit. I think he has very low tackling stats. It would appear that he does. Only the 5 on tackling. He's got decent work rate, but he can't get into the positions to make the tackles. I think that's an area that we could look at, and maybe we may have to carry Marley, because the fact is he's our top goal scorer this season. But next year I don't want that to be the case. I want next year Fabio to really step up and be that man for us. Fabio's tackle ratio is over 40, so I'm happy with his work rate there. Kirk did perfectly fine in that area of the pitch as well, and you know, he's the second most minutes played on the entire team for us, frankly, so that gives you an idea. Actually, he played 1,800 minutes, which is only just a few less than Radek Marley. Cross completion, We can ignore James Loveridge because he's played on the wing, so he's gonna, when he has played, he's sometimes done better there. But look at that, Kirk, 18% cross completion is actually very, very good. So I wonder if he's got a decent crossing stat. Let's see, crossing 9. It's probably better than what someone like Radek Marley has, 6, and my guess is Fabio is probably not too bad on crossing, 8. So Adam Kirk and Colin Murphy. Again, so Adam Kirk has the best crossing of any of our strikers, and it's shown out with his 18%. When he pulls out wide, he's delivered some decent passes, as you've seen all year. As for goals, 11 for Marley, and Kirk is the second best goal scorer with only 6 though, and that's an area that I really would like to see him work on. But as I've already said, Kirk is the sort of player that is not for now. He's one for the future. I feel like there's still a lot to come from this lad. I didn't expect him to be fantastic from the off. I think he's done an okay job in his first season, but I think next year he needs to be better. But the thing is, he might be slightly further down the pecking order. He'll get less game time, but it doesn't matter because he still only thinks he's a hot prospect from what I know. I think that's the case anyway. We'll have to check that one, but yeah, I'm pretty certain that's what it is. As for assists, I'm not expecting strikers to get assists, to be honest, but Colin Murphy did pick up a couple as well. Barely started a game, but got 4 goals off the bench. Now, a lot of people said, why aren't you starting Colin Murphy? All of his good play came when he wasn't starting games. He was so good off the bench as an impact player that I almost just started using him like that. And, people said, why don't you loan him out? Because the whole point of having I want 4 strikers from a 4-4-2. If we're playing a 4-4-2, I want 4 fit strikers, or 4 strikers that I can use in the squad. And if we loan him out, it just, I think it would be detrimental to us in some respects. So, looking at pass completion, something I've really noticed here, though, is that all of them are above 70 for pass completion, which is superb. Adam Kirk, again, is the highest with 76, but it's the same as Colin Murphy, and frankly, Fabio and Marley aren't far behind. They're all about the sweet spot. If it's higher, then fantastic. As long as it's not below 70 for a striker, I'm fairly happy. Tackles 1 per game. Murphy is, of course, the king of that, because Murphy is a machine when it comes to tackling and winning the ball high up the pitch, which might be why he has an effect on us as a late substitute, because he's playing against tired legs and he can harry players for late goals, and I think that's genuinely how he gets a lot of that. Shots on target, once again, Murphy hits 61% of his shots on target this season as well. Fabio was very low on that, and that's an area which we do need to have him improve over the next year. But again, I think that, if he can stay fit, we might be a bit better in that sense. But once again, Murphy is so lethal when he's like a poacher, because he can really hit the target a lot, and I wonder if poacher is actually his best role. It's not, but he's got that great finishing, and dribbling is very, very good, actually. 17 dribbling now is interesting. I wonder if I can get him to dribble more when he plays. That could be interesting. Dribbles per game. Interesting to note that Colin Murphy hasn't got a very high dribbles per game, which is interesting because I might actually end up setting a personal instruction on him that when he plays to dribble more, because I don't think our tactic allows that from the very beginning. Average rating, none of our strikers have got an average rating of above 7, and that says a lot to me about the way we've played this year. No strikers made more than 24 starts as well, and that's Adam Kirk, interestingly. So that to me says a lot as well. We need to stay fit with these strikers. Marley and Fabio are still the most winning pairing, though, and that says a lot as well, because they are the best 2 players in theory. Once again, Marley does not win a lot of headers. Colin Murphy and Fabio both have more. Fabio's won a lot more, 50%, and I think that could be key for us next year in actually winning some headers. Some of his air balls could be good, and Adam Kirk really does fall down in that area. I'm guessing 12 heading and 7 jumping reach are going to be the problem, whereas Fabio has got himself that 11 heading but 11 jumping reach. I'd like to think that Marley could be a bit better there with 16 heading and 12 jumping reach. I'd like to see him win a few more in the air. His strength has gone down, interestingly, but that could just be because of the injury in that sense. So moving along a little bit further to the number of headers, key headers. Radek Marley does win the key ones, though, which is definitely noteworthy, and in fact key passes is definitely a lot higher for for Marley, but Kirk's done a decent amount too. But you'll notice though, Fabio, since he's come in, 46 key passes in 13 matches. I feel like if he plays the same number as those two, he's definitely going to have a higher percentage. He links up the play so well when he's up there, and Murphy as well has that same kind of theory, but they kind of both play the same type of position, so it's definitely food for thought. Mistakes wise, Marley is the king of mistakes regarding strikers anyway. Murphy's been fairly good, but again, hasn't played enough sort of match. Then again, he's played nearly half the amount of game time as Marley and has only made 2 mistakes. So again, perhaps a player that should see more game time next year, unless we bring someone else in. Pass completed, Fabio again is the king of that, and the others sort of have to take a back seat. Murphy doesn't actually complete that many passes when he's played, but again, that just could be because of mostly substitute facts, so it might not be completely legitimate. Interceptions. Fabio was always good at interceptions. In only 13 matches, he's already got 3 more interceptions than anyone else, and that's an area of the team which is going to be massively important if he stays fit next year. Headers 1, once again, Murphy is up there as well with Fabio, but once again, Marley he just falls a little low on that one, and it's a strange one. Shots on, you'll notice that Murphy takes a lot of shots as well, which is another one of the reasons why I like him as a late sub. He just seems to run really well against tired legs, getting good positions and score goals. I'm thinking maybe some more starts for him next year, and we'll see if we can get the better out of him, and we'll sort of gauge it, see how he does when he actually does start matches, and see if he is going to be one of those players that can actually fill that role for us. And if he does, then fair enough, he could have a breakout year next year. So yeah, I'm still happy with the strike force. I know this sounds strange because they underperformed severely this year, but I think that the only player this season that didn't get a severe injury at some point was Adam Kirk, and he was the least experienced of the four of them. And I think that next year, with the same strikers, I might look for another young striker, just as a kind of like, once again, to add to the squad and send him out on loan or something, just to keep building the youth conveyor belt. But I'm actually fairly happy that next year, Fabio, Marley, Murphy and Kirk can actually do a job for us. The problem will be is if we get a load more injuries again. But as far as I know, the players aren't injury prone because they weren't before, and I just feel like this year we've just been very unlucky with that. So I'm not particularly worried about our chances of scoring goals again next year. I think that the areas we need to work on are the creative side of that. Centrally creative, we're great with Duarte and Ramselaar and Masek and such, but it's the wings and the left back spot that are very much the areas that I'm going to look to improve. So there we go, guys. I really hope that you've enjoyed this. It will probably be slightly shorter than the last one was, because I have tried to streamline it down as much as I can, so I kind of know what I'm looking for, but also with that added bit on the start, looking at the team stats as a whole, yeah, we've kind of built up our shopping list. So I'm going to go out and try and spend that £48 million on sort of squad goalkeeper, some youngsters if I can find them, of course, a first team left back, and we're going to look at wingers on both sides to really try and boost that creative play. So there we go, guys. If you have enjoyed this little sort of sojourn away from the usual series, then please do smash a like on the video. I know this video last time did exceedingly well. It's like Mr. Kipling was in charge. It was fantastic. I really did not expect it to have the response that it did. So yeah, hopefully this one's done just as well. And I will join you guys tomorrow at the usual time, of course, for the first episode of the brand new season. Hopefully we can sort of shed the sort of horror of the second half of last year and start off with a bang, get some points on the board and really aim for that. I want to go mid-table this year. I want to see sort of 10th, 9th place and break out the pink joggy bottoms next time. But anyway, guys, I will join you then. So thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.